Yeah, so I am Joe Ziegler. I'm the game director here on Marathon. I've been at Bungie for about 2 years, and before that, I worked on a game called Valorant at Riot.
And so when it comes to Marathon itself, I think it maybe predates you by a tiny bit, but how long exactly has been spent on development from the start till now?
I actually don't know the exact number, I'm gonna be honest, but it's been a few years. There was a few years before me, and then I've been on it for about 2 years, so add that up and more than 4, I guess it's yeah.
And so when it comes to all the genres out there, all vastly competitive as well for their different reasons, why an extraction shooter?
Oh man, I think a part of it is, honestly, beyond the fact that we're all excited to be extraction shooter fans, like we all play, all the different offerings that are out there. Extraction shooters to us sort of symbolize this like kind of rare circumstance in gaming where you have a lot of different choices like inside of a game experience, and all of them become meaningful in a weird way, right? So as you're playing it, you get these like really dramatic stories that occur about survival. Like every decision you made kind of becomes either a point of regret or a point of like, like excitement, and every path you take is sort of like this idea that behind the corner there's this like brand new like light that could exist there, or this dark hole that you will get destroyed in, But that adventurous aspect of trying to survive a dangerous environment is just super exciting and super unique. And I think that's really why the extraction shooter was such a perfect game for us to make, is because as a studio that likes to do these like crazy FPS experiences that really kind of have engaging and uplifting and very like emotionally engaging kind of moments, we wanted to sort of take it to the next level with something like Marathon.
Yeah, I'm kind of new to the extraction shooter scene, so going through the playtest, it was genuinely a very fun experience. More on the shooter FPS side. Speaking of like shooter genre, FPS genre, everyone has a top dog, and when these people are trying to enter with these games, you're trying to compete naturally. Tarkov is in the extraction shooter realm. We got CS when it comes to FPS or the Call of Duties. So how do you guys differentiate, or what is the most unique aspect you guys think you have to compete with those kind of pre-existing big guys?
Yeah, no, I think it's weird because to me, I might be naive in saying this, but I'll be honest. To me, I don't think of making games as like directly competing and trying to eat a bunch of other people's like lunch, in that sense. For me, whenever I think about it, it's like, how do we offer something that's like interesting and cool and can live in its own space alongside other titles and be just as big and important to others, And so for Marathon, I think there's sort of two major angles that we're taking at it. One is that we really do want to create some of the most interesting run stories you've ever had. And we're employing a lot of dynamics to make that happen. It's like, if you want to, at the end of a night of playing Marathon, we want you to like tell a really cool story to somebody else, like be excited to be like, oh man, I went through this sort of crazy experience, just barely limped out, like trying to get through this and survived by the skin of my teeth. So that's one angle. And the other angle is, I think we really want it to be something that's, actually there's 3 angles, I'm gonna add a third one. The second one is we want it to really be approachable, really. We really want to be the easiest one you can get into, right? Because in a lot of these extraction shooters, because there's so many variables and so dense, it can be really hard to kind of trudge through those first hours and even understand how to play the game. We want it to be a lot easier to pick it up and then really get into making the survival stories. And the third angle, and the reason why I might have been taking this for granted, is we kind of want to break the like kind of already existing kind of military space on it and really broaden it out into something that's a little bit more kind of adventurous, paranoid, kind of like modern, bold, stylish, and different, in our own way.
When it comes to this type of game, everyone has their nuanced takes and their of all these things they want to change or you guys can think on, and I imagine the feedback is at times overwhelming. So how do you guys kind of take that mass feedback or mass consensus and kind of take it in, digest it, but also try and stay true to what you had envisioned for the game?
So I think a part of it is actually establishing some like really, really key pillars of like what you think matters when sort of creating these survival stories. Like for us, it was like, what is a survival game? Well, for us, it means that the world is inherently something that you don't expect to survive. Like winning is the idea of surviving in a lot of ways. And so to do that, it has to be challenging enough, it has to be compelling enough to just try to make it to the end, right? And so what are the forces that are driving that? The second part of it was, how do you manage resources? How do you manage the things that you're acquiring and use them in smart ways so that you can get through those dangers? And so those were some of the baselines that we started with, and then as we've sort of been massaging feedback, we're like, is it in relation to sort of like this architecture of like creating survival experiences that we're doing, or is it opposed to that, And sort of how do we massage it? What do people mean by what they're saying in the context of this, right? And as we've gotten more alignment and we've set the right expectations, a lot of that feedback has just been really targeted towards figuring out how do we get people to those survival stories better? How do we get them realizing? How do we up the tension in the right way? How do we make sure that we're not creating unnecessary kludge, I guess you'd say, to the experience that sort of distracts them from doing that? But
yeah. Players nowadays, maybe it's just me, but it seems like maybe it's access to all these, such a wide variety of titles, but it seems players nowadays are very fluid with their games, or can be, right? You spend one day on this game and next day your buddies want to play this game. So how do you guys work to get a player to stick? They want to play your game and be very much ingrained in your game.
Well, there's a couple things, but first I agree totally with the myth of the mono gamer, as we call it, right? It's like everyone thinks like, I only play one title forever, That's not really like it. For a lot of gamers, you're right. It's sort of like having a schedule of gaming. It's like having a variety of things that you use to game. Sorry, I was just making sure this didn't fall down. Having a variety of games that you might opt into, especially if you're in a social group, especially if that social group is a group that has a variety of different sort of players inside of it. The key thing for us was making Marathon a little bit more of a social extraction experience in that sense, right? Where there's a lot of value in playing with other people that you know or people that you want, and you all feel like you can create that adventure together, and we're not trying to like fragment you all the time, Like your classic, like the classic kind of like more hardcore battle royale experience, for example, is like you're playing as threes, one person dies, and the other and they're just like waiting the whole game, right? While the other two are finishing it up. We wanted to break some of that up and be like, no, you can always kind of get your buddy back in if you can survive, right? And we also wanted to add just automatic value, which is like some things are shared. We put in data cards into the world, which sort of like makes it so that everybody can get cash out, from a session together. Things like that, add that like sort of like, oh, actually playing with my friends is always kind of like a pretty frictionless experience, so we kind of want to drive that.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe it's because I'm more of a casual, but I like the fact that even when you're downed, as long as your bag is still there, they can get you back up. So it's, for someone like me, I really did enjoy that. But kind of piggybacking off the trios, all these games had to choose between squads or groups of 5, or in case of Fortnite, you got solo, duo, trios, however many they can fill. So why did you guys land on trios?
So a couple things. Like honestly, we landed on trios because as we were sort of thinking about how big a group size should be, 3 seemed about the right size where it didn't seem to create this like dominance factor. Like when you're thinking about PvP games, right? Like let's say you have 3 groups that come up against another 3 groups, right? It never turns out that just like 3 groups just destroy the other 3, It always kind of goes into like, oh, one person went down. What do these 2 do? And then that happens, right? If you get to 5, it gets more complicated because like 3 people went down, these 2 people. And so then how do you tune your game to make sense where 2 people can always win against 5 people, With 3, it gets a little bit more manageable because you're like 3 people go in, you kind of end up with like, like situations where 2 and then 1, and 1v3 is still kind of manageable, And so some of that was built on that. The other part was really honestly built on the idea that 3 seemed like a manageable size for like a game where you're constantly, your head's on a swivel and there's like a ton of danger happening in every space. How many people can you really coordinate and communicate in that scenario?
Yeah. And then again, piggybacking, but the lobby sizes were also widely talked about. So thought process behind 18-player max lobbies?
That was actually more of just us consistently. We've played with a variety of different lobby sizes on each map. And we wanted it to be full enough where you kind of ran into people very frequently, but not so full that it was guaranteed you'd run into them immediately or like in specific instances. So to create that texture of like, it could have happened here, it could have happened here, it could have happened here on your run, we kind of toyed with different entry numbers until we got where we felt like it was strong. But yeah.
And so for people who maybe are more heavy combat oriented versus someone like me who's maybe more passive, wants to see a bit more of the map, future plans for smaller / bigger maps to accommodate?
Yeah, we do. It's very likely that almost every map will have a way to avoid other players. But having said that though, our game is inherently like one of those games where the fear of running into another player is kind of what drives a lot of it, And so it's unlikely that you'll never run into anyone else. It's very likely that you're gonna probably encounter somebody at some point who's gonna try to want to kill you. How well you evade and, sort of like escape the situations and things like that will be your own story. But yeah, right now I think all the maps are actually more geared towards the idea of providing that level of choice, about is it too dense where we can't evade anybody, or is it too loose where nobody ever sees each other? We don't want either of those situations to occur. So we're kind of no matter what the crew size is, it's always going to kind of be geared around that tension in the middle. Yeah.
And going back to things like economy, loot economy with the game, I know you guys mentioned seasonal wipes. So can you guys discuss, kind of expand more on why you chose every 3 months, is it?
Yeah, every 3 months for the season, yeah. So we chose 3-month seasons, partially, I don't know, like I'll be honest, glibly at first, because seasons occur every 3 months, Like when you think about it, the word season is like, but realistically it's actually because we thought that was the right cadence for the pace of how a person can go on a journey through like sort of the arc that we want them to, through all the contracts, through all the sort of seasonal things that occur there, through the events that we're planning, and then have a reset. So if it takes too long, you're probably going to drop off at a certain point and just be like, oh, I'll wait, a while until the next thing happens. And if it's too short, then you're like, I didn't even get a chance to finish the thing that I was trying to do this season. So for us, we measure that at about 3 months, yeah.
Gotcha. I know this has been talked about very briefly, maybe not something at launch, but ranked play is a desire to kind of add that feature in the future?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at that feature right now. I mean, it's definitely always kind of been on our plate, It's an interesting design challenge, but we have a couple iterations on a version that we've tested previously, and then we're going to be testing or looking at bringing out again in the post-launch world. When it comes out, it will probably be in a state where we want to test it with players and get it right. So there's still going to be some iterations even as we bring it to live, but yeah. We want to make a way that you can like sort of play a rated version and then kind of go like, how good am I at this game? And be able to show it to other people, but yeah. Yeah,
I think that would be a sick, I know a lot of the creators here had expressed a desire for that one. Only a few more for you. You mentioned in your talk too, that's something I hadn't even had an idea about, was the durability. And so would that apply to just weapons, or what exact items would that all apply to? Any more details on the durability feature?
Durability almost applies, I think it applies to all weapons right now. And I think we're looking at making it apply to almost everything, like in terms of implants, not consumables. Consumables, obviously, they're just consumables, but yeah, so I think we're making it look to apply to all those things. The way we've thought about the durability feature, though, is it's supposed to be less about you using it and it getting weaker, and more about when it changes hands, it sort of like takes a tax and a cost to how it uses. So we'll explain more, obviously, about it as we get closer and closer to launch, but hopefully as people are playing it, they're feeling it out and seeing if they like it or not. Yeah.
You had a really good line in there too. Surviving needs to feel like a win, not just losing feels like a loss. Can you expand on that as well?
Absolutely. I think like in a lot of games, when you build the expectation that you're supposed to win, you tend to think of everything that doesn't happen like that as this waste of time, this loss, right? But like when the challenge is ultimately, can you survive it? The world has to feel like something that inherently you shouldn't be able to survive, right? And so to us, that means that we're really dialing up the heat a little bit to make this survival game feel like a survival experience, and that surviving should really feel like you've actually accomplished something, as opposed to just like, oh, because I didn't survive, I'm a failure. No, it's like, no, failing is a default in this game. Like surviving is the thing that you really feel like you got something great out of. Yeah.
Are there any hints then for this game lands, it hits, people love it and adore it as you guys are hoping for? What's like any hints at like the long-term roadmap at what the end goal for you guys would be?
Long-term roadmap. I think like that's actually one of the funnest parts about sort of thinking about both this IP and the game that we're creating, is there's so many different trajectories we can take it, both from kind of like where are we going with this? Like some people, longtime fans of Marathon might know that we have familiar elements in there, and they might look to see more familiar elements as like time goes on. Some that we've already talked about, or not talked openly about already, but internally very heavily about. But also, I'll be honest, a lot of even the ideas that we have to push post-launch for how the game is going to evolve is going to change a lot with player feedback, with basically how players react to things and how we prioritize different things to make that happen. So honestly, the future is kind of a shared prospect, if that makes sense, right? It's like, we've got ideas, now let's hear your ideas, and as they sort of begin coming together, we'll figure out what the actual future actually looks like. But yeah.
Gotcha. Last one, most important one. How much money did you guys spend on that CGI trailer?
That is a secret, but I will say more than any money spent, it was a very, very intense labor of love from a lot of different people to try to make it happen. And there's a lot of people to thank for all of that work, probably more than we can get into right now. But it was an awesome collaboration, and we're really proud of what the result was. Yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah, that trailer.
It was crazy. Yeah,
I can't wait to share that one.
Yeah.
But that's all we got for you. Cool. I know you got plenty more, but thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I appreciate it.